If you've been watching the real estate market in the MatSu Valley for any amount of time, you know the past couple of years have really been interesting, and that is definitely not going to change moving forward. My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And today we're going to be taking a look at what's going on in the MatSu Valley, looking specifically at the residential, the condo, and the multifamily market. This continues to be a pretty interesting market. I'm seeing some trends I'm not seeing anywhere else really in the state. So we'll be getting to that in just a minute. Before we get started though, do make sure you give this video a like, subscribe, and let's go and jump into today's market update. Now, the first thing that we're seeing on the residential side, because we'll start in residential, and the first thing we're seeing on residential is the active inventory is actually increased year over year. So this is a good thing if you are a buyer, because that means that suddenly you are starting to see some more options. I really suspect this really has more to do with MatSu Valley is kind of the big driving force behind all the new construction in the area. So yes, there are more new construction options, and so that's driving the amount of inventory that's available up. And these are going to be the more expensive, top end of the houses though. I need to break it down a little bit more. I suspect we are probably seeing kind of still a compression for the resale properties. But this time last year, there's about 413 properties available on the market. Now it's about 511. The MatSu Valley is unique also because we see kind of an upward trend of inventory instead of going down like what we see in Anchorage and Eagle River. So this is kind of an interesting anomaly. We haven't really seen this in a while in a whole lot of other places where we see the inventory actually going up going into the fourth quarter. So this is interesting. Let's keep an eye on it. Let's see what that does with our number of properties that are actually selling and the average sold price. Now, the number of properties that have actually sold went from about 233 the year before to about 210. So we are starting to see a little bit of a slowing down for the number of properties that have actually closed during that time frame. That's still pretty high overall for the historical performance for the area, but we are starting to see the number of sales or the number of properties that actually sold starting to go down a little bit. Now, the next thing we're seeing is the average sold price for properties in the MatSu Valley went from about $348,000 this time last year to about $385,000 this time this year, which is about a 10.66% increase of the average sold price. That is pretty dadgum aggressive. The year before, we were seeing about a 15% increase for the average sold price. So what this really tells me is, again, we probably have a lot of new construction that's going on, and that is the absolute top end of the market for kind of the price that you're going to see. So that's kind of driving the price overall for the properties in the MatSu Valley up. So that's kind of a favorable trend if you own real estate here in this area though. But yeah, we are seeing that going up pretty aggressively. Now, looking at the condo market, not a huge sector overall of the entire market in general. It's the MatSu Valley. People don't move out here to be in condos, but we have a little bit of a market here. There were 5 available on the market this time last year. Now it's 3. The next thing that we're seeing is the total number of properties that sold that were condos was 6 this time this year, or this time last year, sorry. And the total number of condos that are available that have sold is 3. Cut me a break. Just got back from a long trip. I'm going to misspeak here and there. All right, let's take a break real quick here. For those who've been watching for a little bit here, you do know that I host a podcast called the Alaskan Journey Podcast, where I interview people who've recently moved up here and what their experiences have been. Make sure you go check that out. And the little description section down below. And also, if you are considering getting your property on the market, do feel free to reach out to me on my website, because I do have a free resource I have for sellers. It's just a seller guide, kind of walking out the steps that it's going to take to get your property ready to be on the market. So do make sure you go check that out. Go to my website. When you're registered, just make sure you put seller guide in the description section so I know what to send you. Now, let's go and finish up by looking at what's going on in the multifamily section of the real estate market. So this time last year on the multifamily market, we see there were 29 properties that were available. Now it's 33. So similar to the residential market, we are starting to see kind of an increase of the inventory. Now, before you get too excited and start saying the market's about to crash, all this crazy stuff, this is still about a third or a quarter of what our normal inventory is for multifamily. in the MatSu Valley. So before we get too excited, it is going up, still nowhere near to where we were in previous years. But that's a promising trend if you're looking to purchase, and we'll see if that continues. Now, what we are seeing is that the number of properties that have actually sold on the residential side has started to go down a little bit. Just really across the entire year, we're starting to see kind of a softening of the number of multifamily that have actually been selling. I have a sneaking suspicion as to why that is. Partly it's because, inventory gets compressed to a certain point, and it really just kind of becomes unattainable. This time last year, it was 11 that sold. This year, it's 7. I suspect the next graph here is probably going to explain why we're starting to see kind of a bit of a softening in the number of people that are actually closing on these multifamily properties. And as expected, this is probably why. So this time last year, the average sold price for a multifamily property in the MatSu Valley was about $465,000, which is doing pretty good. Now it's about $490,000, which is going to be approximately a 6 or 7% increase for the average sold price. This time last year is about 10% increase for the average sold price. And I think really the reason that we're starting to see kind of a slowing down of the properties that are actually selling is because a lot of landlords are seeing the prices that people got in previous years, and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to go get more than that. And that's not going to happen. More on the multifamily side than on other sectors. Real estate market, the interest rates do play a big impact. Properties that I was able to make sense on paper a couple of years ago, like the 2.72 interest rate I was able to lock in, which was awesome, doesn't really translate now. Okay, so if I try to go buy the same property at the 6.6, 6.7% interest rate, suddenly those numbers don't really make sense, and I'm just going to pass and let somebody else have that headache. You have kind of some beginning investors who maybe haven't really learned that lesson yet, that just because something looks nice and there are high rents on it doesn't mean it's going to be a good deal. Okay, you have to be able to budget in a certain margin for error and for the market adjusting one way or the other. And just because average sold price goes up across the board on the average doesn't mean yours goes up, because on the multifamily properties, the value of that property is going to be tied to the rental income. And a lot of these private landlords, they aren't really increasing the rents very much. And that is the main way that your property is going to be evaluated. So it's a great place to invest. I expect to continue to see some aggressive appreciation continuing going forward. You just have to make sure, one, if you're a buyer, that you're paying attention to your numbers, and two, if you're a seller, that you're paying attention to your numbers. Okay, just because someone else's property sold for X amount doesn't mean yours is going to sell for the same. You need to know more details about the condition of the property and what their rental income was. But this has been the market update across the board. I sure hope this has been useful for you. If it has, give this video a like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.